All right, we'll go ahead and get started now. So, um, welcome, and this is the writing workshop. Now, typically, if we're all in person, one of the big components to this would be that we would actually take some time to try some writing, whether that would be nonfiction, if somebody was writing a short story, if somebody was trying poetry. So everybody would actually have actually write something right in the moment, and then we would kind of trade it and talk about it. Can't do that right now, and it would be quite a bit of work to put something big in the chat or try to establish some kind of email chain. So instead, the way that this is a workshop is just like you're in a workshop and you have tools, you have hammers, you have saws, you have tape measures. Um, what I want to do with this is give you some mental tools to put in your writing toolbox. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Creative writing can have a lot of implications. So oftentimes in a school setting, you would see it as just imaginative writing. It's not necessarily an essay that has research and an argument. It's not necessarily fiction or short stories. It's not necessarily poetry, but it can include all of those. So when we're walking through this, you as participants are going to think about it in your own particular time, why you came here. Maybe it's one thing. Well, I've got this paper that I want help on, or that I'm trying to get some information on how I can do it better. Or you want to become an author. You want to start writing fantasy. You want to start taking the world around you and turning it into a story of your own. So whatever your particular focus or your thought process is for coming to this, you're going to like apply these ideas to your position, to wherever you are. I really like being interrupted, and the best way for interruptions to be productive with this is to put stuff in the chat. So if you're like, oh, I have a question on this, you said that thing and I'm thinking of this, totally put it in the chat. We'll talk about it later on as we go down, or if I see it come up in the chat, I think, hey, I think other people would be interested in this also, then I'll invite you to speak on it. Otherwise, let's focus on the chat here and in two other specific ways. So Anna, I see your first name. That's great. I would love it if I could see what your interest in writing is. Are you working on poetry? Are you thinking mainly of school essays? What you are interested in? Is it, hey, I've got these ideas and I'm just interested in how to put it on the paper, or I just feel stuck, you know, or what's a diary? Is it just what goes on in my life? Which we'll get to, because diaries are very important kind of ongoing tools and exercises that help with all kinds of writing. So my email's here, and what I think would be, I am totally open to, is if you're under 18, talk to your parents about this. At the library, we try to help with everything. That includes, if we have the time, not just getting you books, but also working on, if you have a question about how to get ebooks on your phone, coming up to the desk. In the same way, with a question, we want to help with writing if we can, if we just have the time for it. So that's how we can be available. I also have a blog where I like to post guest authors. So this would be another place if you're thinking, hey, could something like this go up? Then we can start talking about it, if that would be the option to put your writing onto the Keppel website. So we would start that discussion. So these are the three concepts and activities that have stuck with me as I've started to do some creative writing, as I have listened to authors or to teachers. These are the kind of the big concepts that have really stuck with me. So as we go through this, I'd encourage you to take notes. It's part of the writing, it's part of the collecting, it's part of the thinking. Some people really like to take notes and write down everything. There's going to be a lot of points to this, but only write down the things that stick with you, because I think it would be better that you'd walk away with things that stuck in your head that are really helpful to you, rather than to have notes that try to take everything, but everything just kind of then washes right out. Because I have a tendency to do that, to try to collect everything as quickly as possible. So think, write, collect. These, as you can see on the pie, they all make one. So this is the creative writing life, because it doesn't stop. No matter if you start now and write your entire life every day, or you start now and you like stop for 2 months, which you probably won't, because if you're in school, you're going to be writing something. So these all connect as a whole. And sometimes we sit in one of these spots a little bit longer than others. So my tendency would be to sit and collect a lot. Be just, oh, this book, this article, this image, these just kind of trying to put it all together. And it took me it was hard for me to jump right into the writing stage for various reasons. But so you might find yourself gravitating toward one thing, and you know that you have weaker spots, and actually like sitting and actually taking 15 minutes and thinking only about your persuasive argument that you're working on for your essay, or only about how do I take these ideas and emotions and put them on the paper. So some people are perfectionists. Sometimes you just have to jump right in. You just have to start putting stuff on the page. If you want, if you like, I kind of have a story, but I only have some ideas, just jump into it. And we're always moving in between or around, or doing two things, the thinking and writing at the same time, or we're just jump right in. So a couple of items that I like to refer to, because you can find a bunch of stuff, but I've listed some physical books here. The Well-Tempered Sentence by Gordon is great. It's punctuation, which you'll find in pretty much, especially the first two. They're really funny books. They're fun to read. Sin and Syntax, How to Craft Wickedly Good Prose by Hale is, again, fun to read. Even the cover is decorative. So people who do this, like, there's a term, the medium is the message. So that oftentimes, like, let's say you have a poster, or you have something important you want to say, how you present it on that poster contributes to the influence that you have on the reader. It contributes to how the person experiencing what you're trying to communicate. So that's why the third one I see is pretty important, because it blends speaking and writing together. Because that's another good way to think about things. Oftentimes we don't speak how we write. It's either because of how we're taught or how we're socialized, but they're very close together when we start looking at the experience of the listener or the reader. So read about it, find stuff. There's always some kind of um, there's always some kind of presentation or entertainment involved, even if it's a fairly cut and dried. You still want to present the information in a way that pulls people in. Sometimes you can write flippantly. We'll keep moving. Style guides are important. This is where you can go for the nuts and bolts. The top one's my favorite, so I put it on top. I like Chicago Turabian. You can get really nerdy, but it tells you how, especially in citations, how do you keep track of your sources. The website owlpurdue.edu has many citation styles, including the big three, MLA, APA, and Chicago. And those are going to be the ones that you might use a form of those in high school, and you'll definitely be using one of those in college. Grammarly.com is another place to go. So is Grammar Girl. So these are places where you can go for the nuts and bolts mechanics. Where should I put, how should I use a semicolon? How should if I want to put a notation about where I got this information in the text, that's the same sort of thing you'd use the OWL at Purdue at. What Grammarly.com and Grammar Girl have are articles that go into detail about how grammar and structures work, even more so than the other two sources. Let's go read stuff, right? I think if you listen to your favorite authors about what they do, they'll probably read other people's stuff. Just like musicians will listen to other music, or screenwriters will watch other people's movies. Everybody will have influences. Everybody will say, hey, I got to get away from my thing for a while and go look at something else. So just go for it. If you're on one of those websites, if you're on Grammar Girl and you're like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, what's this other thing? I'm going to learn about this. I'm going to learn, learn about clauses because I still don't understand about clauses. You'll never understand everything. So if you have the time to collect and to think, follow some rabbit holes on writing. Go read, find people that you like. And again, jump into the library. We've got some great databases. We've got some great books, electronic and hard copy, that are about writing. We've got poetry. We've got collected college essays. We have nonfiction that is all reading about writing. And you can go get people talking about their work. And you just type that in, writing guide. Read muchly, read widely. Go for stuff you never thought you would. So go for something. It's always good to grab something that, oh, I know I like this sort of thing, as well as, oh, this is new and weird, and maybe I should know about it, or I'm going to try it. This is a good example. I love this example. This is a phrase that I did not invent. I would like to have. But the word muchly just sounds weird. We don't use it. It's technically correct. It was my style choice because you're like, wait, you're just being silly and you're using something wrong, which some people do. But it grabs the attention and it's just fun. So that's a way I was being creative as I was doing the presentation. Take notes, just like now when you're sitting there and you're watching the slides, writing down the things that are important to you. Do the same thing when you are not only, I mean, the obvious thing is when you're doing research for school and you're taking notes on, you wrote the book and why this is important to your project and saying, go back and read these pages. Do that with fiction. Is something really struck you when you were watching Netflix and you're like, wow, that idea, that presentation, it seemed important to me. These are always moving in your mind. A screenwriter, Nora Ephron, said everything is copy. And she meant by that whole world is inspiration for. So we're going to look at these concepts linearly, but they all wrap into each other. So when you're thinking about your writing, what's your goal? You'll probably know your form right off the bat. Is it an essay? Is it poetry? But you'll also want to think about what you want your readers to feel and to know. Is it, if it's an essay, here is this thing that happened 100 years ago. It's a historical essay and why it matters now. Here is what's going on kind of in the science field and why it's important for us right now. Keep those in mind. So technically a thesis or a thesis statement really lays out explicitly in an essay what the author is trying to tell the reader. I'm using it in a way a little more broadly. What's your intent? What's your purpose? Kind of keep that. And sometimes when you're in the process of thinking, that can kind of be ephemeral. You can have, well, there's like a connection between this thing and that thing, and I don't know what it is yet. That's okay. That'll kind of come out during the process. You want to give your reading and your writing some space from yourself. Like write what you can, read what you can, but give yourself some space to think about it. Because oftentimes things will bubble to the surface, either when you're giving it space or when you go back. So if you're writing drafts, as much time as possible. And I remember putting things off, in college and writing the night before. That'll happen. You shouldn't let it happen. I should not have let it happen, but it happens. Nevertheless, it's even if you're like, okay, I have 5 hours to get this whole thing done from start to finish, and I should have done the research, and I should have been starting this 3 weeks ago because I got the syllabus, or I knew it was coming. I got the rubric. So even if you're in a crunch time, build in time where you can get space, where you can go get up and walk around for 20 minutes. Because no matter what the situation is, getting some space between you and your subject is important. Fairly self-explanatory here. How does everything come back together? And I love this image because it's a blow up of a thumbprint, fingerprint image. So you see all these lines, some are dramatically curved, some are barely curved at all. You can have those, if you imagine like each one of those is a different idea or a different source or that you are putting together. Individually, they only say what they say. It's you with your next human touch, because the first human touch is where you got those ideas. Putting these together creates something unique. You're working on putting this together, and when you do that, you're making something new. And it might not be dramatically different from other things out there. It might fit into a genre, it might fit into a category, and that's okay. But nothing is ever going to be exactly as what you made it. That's why I love this writing. That's what I want you to keep in mind, whether you're like, all right, I much prefer something else, but I have to write, or man, I want writing to be my life. just know that when you're doing this, like so many other things in life, what you produce is uniquely you. So how does it flow back into your thesis? What do you want your audience to feel and to know? There's some philosophy that you can kind of keep in mind. Um, there, and it's does language describe or does language define? And there's a whole branch of philosophy that deals with this. Um, language, does language talk about what something is like? You're making allusions, you are trying to describe what your subject does, what it is, and that's what all of our words do. You're kind of showing it. Whereas language, trying to define, say, here's what it is, here is objectively what it is, and you're telling the reader. So this is not only what language is, or the questions about what language is, but how we use it. And there's really no solid answer. These are binaries and they kind of flow into each other. And there's play, it's called language games, this branch of philosophy. But these typically these are two lenses that are very useful into when we're thinking about what language does, how we use words. So, talk to yourself about this, which is weird. Have the ideas if you're working on your piece of fiction or your short story. You have your character. Think about it. That character is an extension of you. Why is this person doing X, Y, and Z? Why, if you're trying to understand if you were in a particular position, why would things happen? You might end up not even putting exactly what you thought into your work, but that's going to inform it, even if it's on the periphery. Another good practice is imagine speaking or reading as a performance. So I'm even doing that now, thinking if I were to transcribe my presentation into text, how would I do that? When you are thinking about speaking and performing, more ideas will pop into your head. You'll have connections made. It's really weird. Or if you know, I have to present this thing, you can think about how would somebody sit and read my presentation. They can inform each other. So me talking to you on a little tiny device, way wherever you are, I also imagine what if I was on a stage and I had a big light in my face and I had to talk to a bunch of people. So putting yourself in different positions and how you're explaining something honestly, it's just a fun practice. But it will come back into how you're forming your writing. Think, write, collect, think, write, collect, think, write, collect, think, write, collect. So let's go back to mechanics, and that's the mechanics of grammar and sentence structure, which I can't get into very well right now because I am always learning. I am always forgetting. I am always having to go reference things. What I'm talking to you right now is get the stuff that you want to use. These are your physical tools. Get a cool booklet. We can use those college ruled, flimsy stuff. If that's like the thing that you can have access to, that is more than good enough. That in a big pen, you can do it with that. You can do anything you have with that. If you have the option of finding what you like, I say, yeah, go for it. Find something that you like. I like the feel of this. I like to write with only blue ink. That's just a thing. And I like a notebook that is, about this big and kind of has a nice, smooth feel to the outside of it. I like that because that makes me go, hey, I want to get into it and use it. Now, the thing that can be distracting is don't think so much about your tools or looking for all the cool stuff I have. I have 500 fountain pens. Oh, when's the last time you used it? I don't use them. Are you just collecting them? No, I want to write, but then I just think, I gotta find better notebooks. That's a thing. So don't get too distracted that you never actually get to the thing you want to do. So if we're moving into collecting, in these notebooks, in these books, I would suggest put everything that speaks to you somehow or that you think is important in that. Samples of, here's a piece of poetry, and you put the author and where you found it. Here's a concept. What is it like if I feel that I need to be a leader in my local community, but I really get a lot of stage fright and I think I'm introverted? It's an interesting concept to explore. Write that down. Find images. If you come across books, write the titles in there so you can either go back to them right then or at some other point. It's kind of building a treasure chest. So here's the diary part. A diary can be you just write what happened to you on the days. That's fine. When you're doing this, put a date on the page and that's it. And then get to your writing. Don't put multiple dates on a page because I think that it is much better for the imaginative process if you have on the right side, unless you're moving from the left to the right, make a new page. And when you're writing, put anything in there. When you're writing, be honest. Put a little bit of whatever you have to put in there, put it in there. Because that's what you want to create. This is not just a collection of other people's stuff. Think about that thumbprint. This is other people's stuff, but this is also helping you kind of understand who you are. You are not only like looking inside of yourself and thinking, oh, who am I over here? You're also saying, oh, this is really important. I want that as a part of me. So that's what a diary can do. Then go back and reread it. Sometimes it's really embarrassing. Sometimes it's like, oh, hey, I wrote a cool sentence. This is like your source book for your inspiration if you do want to write poetry. If you have, hey, the professor says, I need you to write this paper. I need you to write a persuasive research paper. And you're like, oh, there was something that I really liked. And you can kind of like go back and say, oh, this struck me. I need to research this. Shorthand for citations, I suggest the author and the title and the chapter. Now, it's great practice, even better practice to go back to one of those style guides for ALA, MLA, or Chicago. But sometimes when you're just writing and you don't want to break up the flow, this is a good shorthand. Yes, quotes, ideas, references. So I'm double checking the chat. See, oh, there you go. Yep, mainly school SATs and SAT. I like to journal about my day. Yep, exactly. We are going to have a college writing essay from a professional who coaches college writing. It's going to be here. So check our calendar. It's going to be October 1st at 3:30. October 1st, 3:30, the same format. It's a professional who's going to come talk specifically about college writing, entrance exams, and you can ask him questions. So let's keep going. I'm going to go for about 15 more minutes. We're going to hit our 45. This is too much text on a page, but I thought it was important. Keep everything together. Keep it all in one or two places. You have your diary, you have your journal. That's where you kind of put everything. If you're writing short stories or your poetry, You could put it in there, or you can have, this is my poetry book, and you have all your poetry together. Or you have a running Google document where you're trying to collect things. That's good. You don't want it scattered. You don't want to lose anything. If you start having a body of work, you can start pulling out and saying, so from my diary here, this is a story that's happening. Then you kind of have, it can take a life of its own, electronically or physically. This happens a lot to me too. Things will pop into my head. I'm reading, it can be fiction, nonfiction, doesn't matter. I like to always have my diary and a pen with me. If it's my book, if I own the book, I will write in it. And I encourage people to write in their own books, whether it's just a bracket, so you can go back to it, whether it's a note at the bottom, because it sparked something, that you're reading something that, you know, is about indigenous wisdom from an author from the West, but you're saying, what can I do in my hometown to like reconnect with nature and my neighbors? That's great opportunity. Write something down if it's your book. Or if the owner says, because when I loan stuff to people, I tell them, underline something you think is important. Because it's a little bit of them that we can connect on. Sometimes it takes a long time to say something, to think about it, to say something that you think. This happens. Think, collect, write. Think, collect, write. So just jump in. We can be so aggressive with ourselves. And this is something that I had fallen into. Every sentence needs to be perfect. Now, if you're writing the ACT and you're on time and you have to keep going, that almost intensifies it, but you just need to jump in. If you have the time to go back and scratch things and tweak it, that's wonderful. Keep in mind where you're going. That can help. Yeah, sometimes you just need to go. These are a little redundant. They're kind of like notes for myself as well as notes for you. I say write by hand if you can. There are new scientific studies about the connection between the hand and the brain. The computer is a very important tool. It has opened accessibility. It has opened versatility. We need to have both. If you are writing a story, if you are collecting information on a topic, out of order is okay. If you have one page for a particular book that you're studying because you want to use that in your essay, that where it can be not only the date up at the top of the page, that's also where you can put the title. Because then you can go back and you can say, oh, so on this date with this book, that should fit kind of like later on in my argument because that really informs where I'm going with this. It's okay to rearrange things. And no matter what you're writing for, write for yourself. Do it because you love it. Write for your readers because you might not, because you might be thinking about you in your future. You might be thinking for a best friend. You might be thinking for someone you want to persuade. And especially if it's your diary, sometimes just writing something and then destroying it because it's too personal, because it's too honest, can be really powerful, can be really cathartic. Short bursts is great. If you're like, oh, I got this thing, I've done this before, doing the dishes, and I'm thinking about a bunch of stuff. Sometimes ideas just pop into your brain. You don't have a lot of time because you're going in between things. You got to start and you're just going to write it down. That's great. Your idea might not be very long, but it's potent. It's got a snap to it. Long stretches is great. You can actually take the time to work on the idea. You're sitting, you've got, here's my little idea, but I want to work into this. How can I grow it? That's excellent. There are lots of different styles of writing. So that's why I encourage you, go to those sources, the OWL at Purdue, go to grammarly.com and read stuff. Find books about writing. Find what matches you with your interest and what the subject or who you're writing for, if it fits. Learn the rules. Learn how to follow the rules. Then learn how to bend them. Because that's also part of personalization. Short, choppy sentences is kind of this, then this. Long, flowing sentences. I have an example in here. Those are examples of how you can write different styles. Yeah. No, not again. 1, 2. I'd never dreamed, none of the most violent nightmares, and I've had some wicked ones lately for some reason because the horror flicks or hot food I've been ingesting lately. That would be this bad or had the potential for this much collateral damage. I'm pretty sure I'd be dealing with this event and everything afterward that would be caused or connected to it for the rest of my known life, even if I lived to be 110 years old and had amnesia. Or it would be fine. So you got short sentences, you've got 2 hyphens, you have 1 semicolon, you have plenty of commas. These are all creating clauses. I've probably broken an infinitive, which again is a rule that I know exists, but I don't know it well enough to say I deliberately broke an infinitive here. So this is, this is a very stylistic piece. And you can do that with your writing. But if you have too many short, clipped sentences all together, that can feel kind of boring. You can have too many complex sentences, and that would just feel like, wait, I completely lost the track. What's the point? What's happening? This is one thing I'd say. Limit modifiers. 2 kind of really bland examples are very. You're trying to very hard or very emotional or words, and I'm trying to keep it up at the kind of conceptual level. These are words or phrases that I would be using to convey the intensity that goes beyond the term I would use. I would say, instead of saying very sad, say devastated. Something along these lines where you don't have to have lots of words to try to describe a concept that you can find better words for. It pushes you. So remember when I said we don't always speak how we write? This tends to happen with the term so. Typically, so should be in an if-then statement. It hurts so much that I had to take off my shoe and get rid of the rock right away. It's kind of an if-then. So much that. Oftentimes in our speech, we use so as a modifier or a qualifier, like I was so upset, period. Which technically is not a complete sentence. So this is another modifiers. Go to Grammar Girl on the quickanddirtytips.com. Look at modifiers. There's a great essay about what modifiers do or what we're trying to work with. This is another fun one. Sentence structure is important because you can get mistakes. Those mistakes can be funny or they can really be misleading. Only Jessica wants pizza. Jessica wants pizza only. It's going to say 2 different things. Like, of all the people in here, only Jessica wants pizza. Or, look at all this food. Look at all this great stuff. Jessica wants pizza only. Sometimes, so, and oftentimes we wouldn't think about this in a particular sentence. Sometimes they're important sentences. They bought my car for a sister they call Pumpkin. They bought a car they call Pumpkin for my sister. The second sentence kind of tells you why the first sentence is funny, and then you're like, I didn't even see that. They bought a car for my sister they call Pumpkin. Well, are you calling the car Pumpkin, or are you calling your sister Pumpkin? All right. Consider the meaning that is trying to be conveyed with the subject or nouns associated with that meaning. It's close, place as close as possible to the modifier. So here's the citation for that essay. Write it down there at the bottom on Grammarly. So I confused my Grammar Girl does have a good sentence or essay about modifiers also. Dialogue is a big one. They said, typically stick with that. They intoned, they exclaimed, they barked, they cried, they breathed. Sometimes it's good to break it up. Most of the time, if you just use the most basic, they said, he said, she said, da 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 da, the mind is already going, trying to stick with the dialogue. So I'm going to end with this. We often fall into habits or personal tropes. Oftentimes when I first write, my first and even my second draft is going to be meandering. It's going to have incomplete sentences. So I know that I need to get distance, wait, have somebody else read it, and then I can go back and I can clean it up. But this is also a way that you can feel your own style. You kind of start realizing, oh, this, after I've edited this really sounds like me. And that's not so important if you're writing in college, but with your essays, when you're handing it in as part of the grade, it's a personal thing. And if you're personally invested in your writing, that's going to make you interested in, even more so, in the mechanics and in how you're writing, whether it's punctuation or grammar, as well as how you are conveying the concepts and the emotions to your readers. So, any thoughts? I'm pulling up the chat again. Not a problem. Let's see. Yeah, Anna, so do you have any questions, or do you have any thoughts about that? Do you have a favorite pen type? Okay, you prefer pencil because you like how it feels when you write? Yeah. I've been writing with either a ballpoint pen or a felt tip pen for so long that when I go to a pencil, I notice even how do you like mechanical pencils or wood? Yeah, I notice how the wood feels in my hand when I'm holding it. So have you heard of the term mindfulness? Uh, so you might know this already, that it's the concept of trying to be aware of taking a moment. So like I'm sitting with my legs crossed right now, of sitting with moving my feet flat to the floor and sitting kind of straight up, kind of this is how I get into the mindfulness, and just being aware of everything. How do my jeans feel on my knees? How do my glasses kind of feel at the back here? Just being aware of I'm holding the pencil. It's really cool. How do you feel about the eraser? Is it your best friend, or do you try to write so you don't have to use it. Yeah. It's like, so does that mean that you're kind of staying in the thinking about your sentence a little bit longer because you want to construct the words in your mind so you can put it onto the paper? Yeah, it still happens. um, and you'll find that, I think that you'll find people who are masters in their craft will still feel like they have to go back and fix something, or say, you know, what am I missing, or how does this make you feel? So it's kind of a similar thing. I'm thinking about it, but sometimes I just have to go back and erase it because it just didn't work. All right, so how are you feeling? You feeling good with this, Anna? Wonderful. So, like I said, October 1st, 3:30, we're going to get a guy who professionally teaches writing as it pertains to college essays and the type of writing you'd be doing in an undergrad. And I say college, but it can be anything. It could be a 4 year school, it could be a trade school, it can be a 2 year state or community college. These are always important tools. So never stop with writing about your day. Never stop loving your pencil. That might be your thing, and that's a cool thing to have. Like, I always write with pencil. That's awesome. I'm gonna wrap up. It seems like you're set, and I'm glad you're here. You have my email. I'll put it right here real quick. Oh. The library is here for you. This is your space, and I hope you have a good day.